Hello and welcome to another video tutorial Monday. This week I wanted to play with some brand new things that I just got in. I've been feeling quite under the weather for the last couple days, so this video is going up a couple days a bit late, so it's more like video tutorial Wednesday or Thursday. But either way, I hope you enjoy playing along with me today. The main reason for this card is I actually had a friend who watches my videos and I know her in real life from college, and she actually requested a video to see a card made about a shower card that you give somebody at a wedding shower. So this is for her, and I'm really excited because it's my first, like real life friend that's actually requested a video card. So I'm really excited about that, and I decided it was a good chance to pull out some of the new things that I just have picked up. The main inspiration for this card being this Nellie's die by Nellie Snellen, and it has this wonderful doily. I cut out all of them in this white cardstock, but I'm only going to use the outer frame. And I will be having a video tutorial about these on my blog in the next coming weeks. But I'm just loving these dies. They're really fun, and I've only played with them for a little bit, but I know that I'm going to be using them all the time. So you can pick those up over at Simon Says Stamp if you're looking. And links to all the products I use on this will be on my blog at brittaswiderski.com. So I have this frame, and I'm just loving the way it looks. So I decided I want to do this on top of maybe like a pattern or something. So I pulled out my Indie Bloom collection from Basic Grey, and this pattern is just perfect. It's a nice damask that's neutral enough to stay in the background, but it's really pretty as well. And I'm just going to ink the edges with a little bit of tea dye distress ink. And this will help because I'm going to ink all of my edges in this tea dye distress ink around the card to bring it all together and to make sure that none of the white cardstock is showing through on the edges of the pattern paper. And now I can go ahead and use my ATG to adhere it to my card base. And this is a piece of craft cardstock from Paper Tray Ink, and it's folded vertically so that I'll be able to wrap some ribbon or something around if I feel like it at the end of the card. And now you can see my frame is going to go right about here, and I also wanted to use this wood grain stamp from Studio Calico and Hero Arts. It's this wonderful wood grain piece, and then I'll put my sentiment, which is Cheers, from this Paper Smooches stamp set over top of that on a different sheet of white cardstock. But right now we're going to focus on the frame, and I chose this as the opportunity to pull out my brown inks and show you the differences between them, because I get a lot of questions asking what the difference is between chalk and dye ink, and for that matter dye ink, regular dye ink, and then distress ink. So I'm going to stamp these this frame in all of these inks, and then I'll show you the difference between them. So I'll be back in a second. I'll stamp all of these down for you, and then I'll be back in a second to tell you which one I'm going to choose. So I've stamped all 4 of these images on here, and they all stamp relatively the same. For this detailed image, I use a stamp pad underneath it. The only thing, Memento ink kind of stains the stamp, but Chestnut Roan chalk ink stains the stamp permanently. And there's not much you can do to remove the stain. It doesn't affect the stamping. See, I can stamp it on this piece of cardstock. It's completely clean. But if that really bothers you, maybe chalk ink isn't right for you. So we have that. Here is the Memento ink, here's the Jenny Bolin ink, this is the distress ink, and this is the chalk ink. Distress ink is formulated to have more of a distressed appearance and is way better for blending things. So you see this blotchiness. Even if I would have used a darker color that more closely matched these, you would still see the blotchiness. The lines aren't very crisp. So I usually only stamp with Distress ink when I'm doing different techniques with Distress ink. Not really good for just plain stamping. Then we have the Memento ink. I really like the Memento black ink, but the Memento brown ink has always seemed a little bit faded to me, and I have a re-inker for it too, but it just doesn't seem to help it. It's never quite as sharp as I want it to be. So I usually gravitate towards the brown sugar Jenny Bolin ink, and I found that this is just a fantastic plain brown ink, and it stamps like magic, works every time, and the lines are very crisp. The Chestnut Roan ink is nice and it has a very matte finish. It's very opaque, which is really cool, but it just seems like it's not what I'm really going for. I really like the brown sugar ink a little bit better. So it's more of a stylistic choice between the chalk ink and the Jenny Bolin ink, but I think I'll choose the Jenny Bolin ink for this project. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my project, or my little frame here, along the lines. First I'm just going to rough cut it out to make the paper easy to maneuver, and then I'll just go back in with my scissors, being sure to get right up next to that brown line, and I'm going to go around the outside with a brown marker when I'm done cutting it out, just to make sure that the white cardstock doesn't show through on the edges and give it a nice, really clean look. And this is a Stampin' Right Stampin' Up marker and chocolate chip, I believe. Yes. And it's a pretty good match to this color, so I'm just going to use it to go around the outside of the paper. And because it's a brush edge, it just gets that edge really nicely. And if the edge seems a little bit dark at first, because this marker is definitely darker than the ink we just used, it's okay, don't worry, it'll blend out, it'll definitely mellow down, and it won't be too drastic where you'll be able to tell the big difference on your card. So just use what you have on hand and it'll be just fine. Now I can do a little distressing around the edges, and I'm just going to barely distress the edges. I'm not going too far onto the paper, but I want to make sure that it looks nice and homey and vintagey for our card. And I'll repeat the same thing with the doily, and then on this I'll make sure to get around the edges, and as you can see here, I'm not even really going over all of the edges. The edges just naturally grab the ink from the foam pad, so you don't even have to press too hard. They'll just pick it up. And then I'm going to make sure to get the inside of the circle as well. And then lastly here, our last stamp piece is our cheers. I wanted to choose a sentiment that wasn't very wedding related, because it's not quite a congratulations you're married, it's more of a congratulations on your upcoming wedding. So I decided to stick with a fairly neutral sentiment to avoid any confusion for this card, and just go with cheers, because I think it's a very versatile sentiment. It'll get everything across that needs to be communicated, and I won't have to worry about the specifics. Especially since I'm making this for somebody else, I want to make sure that the card suits them and their relationship, and I don't know how close they are or anything like that. So I think cheers is a really great sentiment to use, and one that we should use a lot more often, because it's not a very American word, but I think we should include it in our vocabulary a lot more. Then I'm just going to trim off this side so that it looks like it's about even. And then just add some tea dye distress ink to the edges. I think I'll end up putting rhinestones or something on either end of this sentiment strip, which is why I left that space there. And now I can start assembling my card. So I have my doily, and I think I'll put my doily on just as is. I don't want to worry about foam dimensional adhesive. So I'm just going to use this glue tape from Plus. I really like that it has a cap that twists on so you can't pull it directly off. Great for storage, because I know I lose my adhesive caps all the time. And then the strip here is only 3 dots wide. It's only 4 millimeters wide. So what I can do is actually go in on each one of these scallops and put some dots and not have to worry about excess adhesive or wiping away the excess. It's just perfect. And if this is as sticky as I hope it is, it will work like magic. So I'm really excited about this, and I hope it works how I want it to. Alright, so I'm just going to center it right about here. Looks good. Press it down. Press it down really well. Alright. And it's fairly sticky. I think it could be a little bit stickier, but this is definitely really awesome for these cards because I know that this is going to adhere over it anyways, and so it's going to have that insurance against it. If I was just leaving it like this though, I might add some more liquid adhesive underneath it. But this, the convenience factor of having the really thin strip, is perfect in my book. So I'm going to adhere this next down with some foam adhesive. Okay. And so I've added that foam adhesive and I used the circles for a little bit easier fit. And now I can just center it in this circle. And then when I have it placed, I can press it down. And I really like, I've been using this sticky thumb adhesive, and it's really great because you have a little bit of playtime, but once you press it down, it's really stuck and it's not going to go anywhere, and I really like that. And then I'm just going to put the cheers right directly in the center. I'm going to actually move it a little bit towards the top because your eye naturally puts more weight on the bottom, so this will look centered even though it's actually not. So just keep that in mind. Try it the next time you're making a card and you'll see what I mean. It makes it look more balanced. So we have the cheers, and then this definitely needs a little bit more flair, so I'm going to add some ribbon. This is from May Arts, and this is just the 1/4 inch, and I'm going to tie it in a little bow up here, or down here. Alright, so I've added the little bow here, and I think it needs a little bit of an extra touch. So what I'm going to do is stamp this wood grain stamp again with my Jenny Bolin ink onto some white paper. Okay, so I punched out the wood grain with my favorite heart punch, which is from Stampin' Up, and I just punched them out and then inked the edges, and now I have them on foam adhesive. And I'm going to put 1, 2, 3 up here, and I think I want them in the corner or going across. I'm not sure yet. I'll do that. I'll stick that last one down last. And then one of the bigger hearts here, and then this is really your chance to arrange the bow exactly how you like it, because the adhesive will help it stay exactly in place, which is another really cool thing about adding an element over the top of a bow. Okay, and I was going to add something on either side of this sentiment, but I think I'm just going to leave it how it is, because this card has enough going on already where I think one more element would probably just push it a little bit too far over the edge. So I'm just inking the edges with some tea-dye distress ink just to bring the whole thing together. And then the only thing that I'm going to do is add some glossy accents on top of these hearts so that they really look like accents and not like they're trying to take over the pattern. So to add my glossy accents, I just get it going, and then I make sure that to get all the air bubbles out first before I put it down. And then once you put your tip down, don't lift it up, because if you lift up the tip of the bottle, you'll get an air bubble. So do one heart and then lift up and then do another and then lift up. And this will make it perfect every time. And since these are popped up on pop dots, you don't really need to worry about going over the edges because it'll kind of self-contain itself. So there we have it. Yeah, so I've used a whole bunch of new goodies on this card and I'm really loving how it looks, and I'm sure it'll be a great card for my friend to give her friend that's getting married. So here's a picture of the finished card, and here's a close-up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you again next week on another video tutorial Monday.